Hello, in today's video I want to do a quick tutorial on how to draw a simple portrait. I know a lot of you have asked me before about, well, can you do a quick demo of how you would put pencil to paper, do a real-time portrait? And this is my response to you all. So I have already started, as you can see, putting down some very rough lines down. And the way I like to do this step is basically I hold the pencil very loosely, right? And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find the general direction of the face and where, what makes her face special. And I picked this example because I've actually drawn this model a few times already. I was just find her picture on Pinterest. And the reason I like to draw her is because she has a very unique feature, right? She's very recognizable. Her eyebrows have this interesting shape, and she also have an interesting gaze, I would say. I find that she doesn't usually have, what do you call it, a ton of makeup, right? Kind of like what you see is what you get. The facial structure that she has is also unique, not only because the eyebrow is interesting, but her eyes is really interesting and unique as well. They're a little bit further away from one another. So if you capture that in your drawing, it is really obvious who you're drawing. At least I find, right? She also has kind of this like almost anime-like look to her face, which I find to be really interesting because I love anime. It's also Halloween today, so it's got that going. So yeah, like you see, step one for me is always just to capture the general shape, and then you make tweaks as you see. And I'm generally speaking, holding the pencil really loosely in this stage. And what I like to see now is kind of like, well, do I have this captured like relatively correctly? Because sometimes you look at it in a slightly different angle and you realize, oh wait, that does not look like her, or that does not look like the reference photo. Oh yeah, also for those of you who are wondering, I do use a reference photo pretty much every single portrait, because what I'm doing with these daily practices is that they're practices. They're not meant for a masterpiece or something that I want to hang in a museum one day. No, that's not really the goal here. The goal here for me is practice. So I typically just find whatever I can find. Sometimes I find if I'm watching something, or if I'm shopping online, I will take screen caps of interesting things I want to draw. So at this stage, I'll kind of reevaluate and make changes to it, because maybe I made some mistake, maybe there are lines I don't really like, and I'll start to start to fix things, right? So I have the tendency to make the eyes a little bit too big. So in this case, I believe I did do that. I don't think her eyes are nearly this big. But you know, sometimes it's fine, right, to exaggerate a little bit. You don't have to draw the reference exactly as is. Otherwise, what's the fun in that? So, yeah. I feel like in this one, the eyes are probably a little bit too big, but I also don't really feel the urge to go back and fix it anymore. So I'm just gonna leave it. Now that I've got kind of the overarching feel of this person captured, or the likeness, if you will, captured, my next step is for shading. Okay, so how long did that take? That probably took about 5-6 minutes, give or take. And I move on to shading, and to me, that's my favorite part. I will add details to the eyes because I love drawing the eyes. That's my favorite part. My least favorite part for drawing is the ear, and it's a good thing that in this one there's no ear. Okay, so turns out that I didn't realize, but I lost a bunch of the footage. It was not recording, so I don't know how much I can salvage from this video, but I'm now at this stage of the drawing. So in this stage of the drawing, what I'm doing is I'm just checking for all the areas that are like the darkest. So around this area, you know, around the eyes, the eyebrows are the darkest, just, you know, and also here, right? Just darken these areas in my drawing. And adding the finishing touches. I don't know how I lost the footage, but it'll have to do. I don't have time to go back and do another one, unfortunately. But this is basically it. I'm at the final touches. I'm adding some more transition around the face. Okay. about it. Let's get started. Okay, one of the first things I do is I hold the pencil really loosely and just try to put down the rough boundaries of her face. And it does not have to be exact. I usually just kind of go by the way I feel the shapes are. In terms of capturing the facial expression and the structure on the face, what I like to do is to examine the direction. So in this case, she's looking down, right? So you can see that, you know, if we draw a circle here, it's kind of like the forehead. The center of that is the forehead, and she has this interesting almond or heart-shaped face, right? And like I mentioned before, it's kind of like a sideways smirk that she has going on, and the nose is about this position. So yeah, in general, this is kind of the first step, okay, of any portrait that I like to do. Is kind of just capturing the shape of the hair, the shape of the head, and it doesn't have to be exact, but as long as you capture these basic shapes, good to go. And for those of you who are like me, who likes to, you know, keep the timer on so that you know how long you've spent in this step. Usually this takes, let's see, if I'm not talking, then usually this takes about like a minute or two. But because I think I'm talking and whatnot, I spend a little bit more time than I would like. So I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. Okay, so the next step typically is I like to capture the eye. My favorite part of drawing any portrait is trying to capture the eyes. Now, like I mentioned, I really like her eyes. I find it to be quite interesting and unique to this model. You know how there are some faces where you look at one for once and then you just kind of instantly remember because it's just quite an interesting face. I find that this model kind of gives me that feel. Sometimes, you know, you can find a face to be really interesting and beautiful, but it could also be really forgetful to me, those are, you know, those are less interesting faces because it's, you can easily forget about them, you know? So one of the things I like to make sure is these are the key points, right? Where the eyes meet, right? These 2 points and these 2 points, the kind of how do I put it? The relationship between them, the distance and the shape usually is pretty key to capture the likeness of a portrait. So right now when I look at the mouth, I feel like it should be down a little more. And she has really, really thin lips, upper lips, but rather full bottom lip. And she kind of has like this little highlight on her lip here. So at this step, usually I will examine the likeness. And now I feel like might have made a mistake by pushing her lip down. So I start doing like micro adjustments to try to capture the likeness. But at this stage, you can kind of see the overall kind of feel of this person should be captured on paper. And this is typically around the 8-minute mark, I would say, if you're doing a 20-minute portrait. Okay, now we add details and shading. So one of the details we can immediately add to give her some life is to add some details to her eyes. Right? As you can see, immediately she became more lifelike. And all I've done is giving her eyes a little bit more definition. So one of the things I would say every artist does is we see different things, right? There are different things that's being captured, because the things that I notice is going to be things that you notice. Some of the things may be really obvious to me, that just like the features on her face really stand out, because for whatever reasons they, you know, they speak to me in different ways, so I emphasize them. That might not be the case for you, might not be what you see, right? For example, one of the things that draws me to her is, by her I mean this model, is her eyes. And I like to draw her eyes. I like to spend more time on her eyes. But maybe that's not you. Maybe when you look at her, there's something else you notice. And that's where you like to spend time on. And that's okay. I don't know why I made her head so pointy. Probably shouldn't be that pointy. So when I draw hair, I try to pick out a shape of the hair and then try to capture that. So for example, this is kind of a triangle. This is a triangle, right? To me, these can be broken down into shape and then drawn that way. I don't know if you can see the pencil mark I made on that one, but it's kind of what I like to be doing when I'm breaking down hair. I find that when you break it into shapes and then put it down, it looks a lot better. It's a similar kind of concept when you are drawing, I would say, you're trying to capture shading, right? So for example, this nose, the way I look at it is I try to capture the shape of the nose. Her nose is kind of cute. There's like a little circle here, right? And there's another circle here where the highlight is. And then there's a little rectangle-ish shape, a trapezoid. Same with the shading, right? So when I look at shading, I look at them in groups, in individual shape. It's probably because I also paint, So when I paint, I definitely consider these as one brush stroke, you know? Might have made her nose a little bit too big, but that's okay. Every drawing's different, and that's the fun of it. What's the point if every single one of your drawings is the same? Why not just take a picture? Why draw at all? So sometimes, you know, when I'm drawing at a certain stage of the drawing, I start to feel like this is a brand new thing compared to this, like, and it typically is around now. So now when I look at my drawing, it has its identity already. As in, I will remember this one differently compared to this picture, as well as, you know, the last one that I've done. And you know what, now that I look at this one, I like this one more compared to this one that I've done earlier today. And it's an interesting feeling. It's basically, at this point, I feel like this drawing now has a life of its own, if that makes sense. I'm the type of person that likes to personify everything, so everything has a name. My car has a name. My plants have a name. And you're, at this point, you're adding details that don't belong in the original picture already, right? Because, you know, they just don't really exist. And you're kind of making up things, which is really fun. I like making up things. So this is basically about it. In the last one, I think I shaded her hair. Yeah. I don't know if I want to do that again. I guess I could. But I think I'll probably leave and probably not have it so dark compared to the last one. I don't typically draw late night at night either, because I find the lighting to be pretty bad. I'm really hoping that this video turns out okay. Smudging this area a little bit. Then adding in some highlights back in with my eraser. And then adding back the details. When you're trying to do long lines, hold your pencil back so that you have more control over it. So one of the things I started doing in late stage is building depth with layers, which is what I'm doing right now. So some of the ways that you can build depth is obviously just adding depth by shading. But also it's identify where is the darkest area and build upon that. So I still really want to capture the smirk. So I'm adding some emphasis to the mouth. One of the things I like to do is leave some pencil marks that follow the contours of the face, because I do find that to be really interesting to capture. But if you feel like sometimes I feel like it's a bit too much, I use a knead eraser to lighten it. That's basically about it. How did I do on time? I am a little bit over 20 minutes. Now I've got a second one of the same drawing. Adding the highlights. Okay. Ta-da!